To me, belonging is one of those fundamentally human topics. Everyone that I talk to throughout the world has an experience where they felt like an outsider, where they walked into a workplace, a workspace, or even just a meeting room and said, "Oof, I don't feel like I belong." For so much of my life, I felt like the world was made up of places I didn't belong. To me, belonging is making sure that when people have a seat at the table, that everyone can show up authentically. If we know who we are, that we don't have to wear masks to fit in, that we can show up as our authentic selves, this is where innovation thrives. I think collective action is such a force. When you can collectively understand why you're doing it together as a group, that's when you start to shift and join in a movement together. How do you actually democratize those innovation processes so everyone can participate? If you carve out time for that culture and the culture building, really beautiful things can happen. You have to be yourself first. You have to understand who you are, why these things are happening in the world, and how you show up in those situations. Hi, I'm Kim Dabbs. I lead global social innovation and ESG for a company called Steelcase. We're the global leader in work environments and where people also learn and heal. I'm also a new author of a book called You Belong Here. And this journey here has been an interesting one, both through my career and through my life. As a Korean born American adoptee, currently living in Munich, Germany, for so much of my life, I felt like the world was made up of places I didn't belong. And over the past few years, and especially during and post COVID, one of the things that I kept trying to pull at throughout my life and throughout my work is trying to understand what are those things that actually shape our experience as individuals, as leaders, as teams, and as organizations. And this theme of belonging was one that resonated and kept coming up over and over in the research. So it's something that I've devoted my career to, my time as an author, as well as the work that I do in the community and in the world. So when I think about my journey of becoming an author, it wasn't something that I had aspired to for my entire life. It was one of these things that I always enjoyed reading other people's books, learning new things, and having this culture of creativity and curiosity. But writing a book was never in the cards for me. And then as I started deconstructing all of these ideas around how people gather, what culture looks like, the more and more I started doing research and diving into the topic. And as I started clustering the insights and really trying to understand how this is applied in the workplace as well as in community, I realized I had a very nice story spine of, of how to build belonging as individuals and as organizations. So I worked with lots of different people talking through and navigating what that process looked like, and ended up working with a publisher called Barrett Kohler. And when we talked to them, one of the things that I really appreciated about them, not only are they a really, really fantastic organization, but they're also committed to social impact. And the books that they produce and the books that they put out into the world are all leading ideas around equity, education, and the environment. So when I started working with them, it was a great opportunity to really rethink how we actually put ideas together, how people are able to learn through the process of reading the books and the ideas, and then how we can bring that into the workplace to leaders. To me, belonging is one of those fundamentally human topics. Everyone that I talk to throughout the world has an experience where they felt like an outsider, where they walked into a workplace, a workspace, or even just a meeting room and said, "Oof, I don't feel like I belong." And as all of us grapple with the reasons we have this feeling of belonging or not belonging, a lot of times we allow the outside world to tell us if and when we belong before we understand what that means for us as individuals. So when I think about belonging, and if you just deconstruct the word, it be is about to exist. So all of us understand that be part. Belong is this desire to exist. And then you tack on that ing, and it's this continuous action. So each of us throughout our lives are actively longing to exist. And when we can really start doing that work as individuals and as leaders to understand what does it mean to belong to myself before I can actually lead teams and before I can lead organizations, it shifts and changes our relationship, how we show up in places and spaces, and then allows us to design and define new ways that we can come together and gather. I think the world right now is all talking about belonging. We're talking, for a very long time we've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity being kind of the number side of it, equity being the barriers we face to opportunity, and inclusion is making sure that everyone has a seat at the table. And to me, belonging, that belonging piece, is making sure that when people have a seat at the table, that everyone can show up authentically. And when we think about the role that authenticity plays, if we know who we are, that we don't have to wear masks to fit in, that we can show up as our authentic selves, this is where innovation thrives. Because when people have to start hiding who they are, when they change their hair and change their name and change the way they look, um, these are places and spaces that not everyone feels welcome and not everyone feels psychologically safe. So when we're trying to build those safe spaces where innovation thrives, some of the things that are going to happen is you're consistently going to be in rooms and places and spaces with people that aren't like you. So I don't want people to mistake belonging as sameness. It's absolutely not sameness. It's the fact that each of us can show up as individuals and make sure that we create the space for others to do the same. Because when you can do that, then you start honoring and respecting each other's humanities. You challenge ideas, you don't challenge people, and you start coming together in new and different ways. And when you can create that culture and those containers for that to thrive, where everyone feels like they're able to belong to themselves and show up authentically, that's when you start having really beautiful ideas. Beautiful ideas that come together, beautiful ideas that when you start to come together and negotiate and start to bring those ideas to life, that's where innovation really takes off. But in order for that to happen on a regular basis, not just once in a while, you have to create that environment where everyone feels the ability to show up as they are. If everyone can walk into a room and feel like they can be their authentic self, and you're gathering to talk about ideas, different things that you want to see manifested into the world, um, this is the innovation process. And when you come together and you start to do these things, you understand what do you want to fight for and who do you want to fight with, and all of those people that have these shared aspirations to move the business, to move the company, to move the world in a positive way. This is where shared purpose exists. A lot of times people confuse purpose, meaning um, only things that can be measured in the outside world. But to me, everyone finds purpose in the work that they do. And if you can tie that into a bigger picture, if you can understand the change that you're trying to achieve through these innovations, through the next product you develop, through the next service that you're going to put out into the world, these are the things that matter. And when you can collectively understand why you're doing it together as a group, that's when you start to shift and join in a movement together. I think collective action is such a force. And when you're starting to show up as your authentic self, when you're united in purpose, understanding that you're all heading towards that same change that you want to see, um, all of a sudden magical things happen. But in order for that to thrive, you have to allow for those micro innovations as well as the macro innovations. You can't have a culture without the culture of experimentation. You can't have all of these opportunities without democratizing the impact that every single employee can have. So I think in order for that to thrive, you need to, one, make sure that the change that you're trying to enact within an organization that will actually impact the world. How does this product impact the world? How does your service impact the world? Help people understand how that's actually shifting and changing the world that we live in. And then the designers can come together and the teams can come together and say, okay, if we want to change the world in this way, and if we're contributing to better work experiences or better healthcare experiences or whatever that may be, then when they start coming through that process, people are also going to be enabled by the processes that you're able to teach within a learning organization. When you're building a movement, what are those common processes that you use, not to be locked up behind closed doors and in only certain forums? How do you actually democratize those innovation processes so everyone can participate? And sharing that knowledge, making sure that you make it a true learning organization is when that curiosity, the prototyping, the new ideas, and the new inspiration actually can emerge within an institution. One of the easiest things that you can do really is at the team level. If you're working on a team that comes together around any type of innovation or common purpose, one of the things that you can do is just on a regular basis come together and co-design what those rituals and norms are going to be of how you gather. And these things matter because they shape the culture that you live in and you work in every single day. And because within large organizations, business gets busy, people's time gets really busy. And if you carve out time for that culture and the culture building, really beautiful things can happen. So for our team within social innovation, within ESG, what we do is once a year we come together and we define our norms. I don't mandate these. We co-create these. What are the things that are going to be important for you this year that are going to guide us? So examples of that is we build with and not for. We're accountable to the people that we serve. These are the types of things that matter when we come together on projects and team meetings, anything like that. This is how we show up as ourselves and for each other. And when you do that, a lot of times organizations or teams or individuals will do this and say, we created our norms, let's put them on the bookshelf and we'll revisit them in a year. But that's where the rituals come in. So for us, making that a ritual is important to reinforce and have that conversation constantly of what's guiding us. What's that purpose? What are those things that matter to us as individuals and collectively? So for every single team meeting we open up with our norms and we go around and everyone does a touch base. How are these showing up for you this week? And how can we support you in your journey as we think about how these play out in our work and in the world? And when you do that, you create those safe spaces for people to say, yes, this week it went really good. Last week, not so great. This is where I could use your support because none of us are going to get these things right all the time. But when you create that culture and put in those rituals and norms, this is something that any team, any leader can do to ensure that you have that container of safety, of trust and belonging. One of the most important things that I love my readers to take away is, you have to be yourself first. You have to understand who you are, why these things are happening in the world, and how you show up in those situations. But you're not doing that in isolation. You're doing that for everyone. So this be you for us concept is really important because we live in community together. And once we start sharing that humanity, this is where beautiful things can happen. And a lot of times I'll get pushback and they'll say, oh, that's nice. People can do that on their own time. That's the inner work stuff. But as leaders, inner work is systems work. And we have to understand as individuals and as leaders that the stronger that we can understand our identity, the power, the privilege that we hold to actually build movements within institutions and organizations, to create the cultures that our teams, employees, and organizations live within every single day, That's a responsibility. So that responsibility to do the inner work, to understand identity and create space for others is going to be critical for all of us to thrive.